Welcome, everybody. I'd like to open with a word of prayer, if we could. Almighty God, we thank you that you brought us here, that we can be connected across the miles in this moment. We invite your presence, and we ask for ears to hear and eyes to see and hearts to understand. And we give you praise. Amen.
Amen.
So this is a work in progress, and because Michelle asked me to consider speaking, I'm going to make you all guinea pigs today. So
Yay!
yeah. So it started with two sermons that were 2 weeks apart, and both of them were on Thomas. Thomas the Apostle. And, he gets the title of Doubting Thomas. But since I'm in seminary, I was questioning that and wondering if there might be some other titles that we could give him. And so this came out of that.
So, Jeff, are you
Yes,
saying
sir?
that you're doubting Thomas?
Yes, I'm doubting the doubtfulness of Thomas.
All right.
Exactly. Let's see. Can you all see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm calling it the way of love because one of the interactions that Thomas has with Jesus is the time when Jesus calls himself the way. Right. There we go. So if we're thinking about love, we can think of places where it's blossomed and places where it's been challenged. And so I'd like to open it up for feedback from you all. Is there a place where you or your family felt set aside, or was there a place or a time when out of love you stood with a friend when the group went the other way? Or have you been in the midst of a holiday time that either was full of love or maybe love was challenged, and you'd be willing to share that with us? Anybody?
Right now?
Yeah, right now.
Oh, I'll go with the second one.
Okay.
By a friend when the group went the other way.
Yeah.
And this is one of the most difficult choices I made, and don't regret it, but it was pretty difficult at that time. So I have a friend, a very dear friend, very close to me for many years, at least the last 20 years. He's 92 now, but age didn't matter. I just considered him a good friend, and he was my good friend. And he's a former physician in the state of Oregon, and moved to Corpus Christi to be with his oldest daughter. And he now lives in her home in the downstairs, the first floor. So it's pretty much, it's confined to kind of, he has a walker, and he's got both knees are pretty heavy, and he's just not doing well. They're typical, 92-year-old. But anyway, about 15 years ago, he and I started and nurtured an organization called the World Affairs Council of South Texas, which is like a Rotary Club or Lions Club or something like that. But anyway, and that means that it's the leadership of that organization are public figures. We are known to be in the press coverage or in the media coverage and television coverage, for certain things, good or bad. So about 14 years ago, this good friend of mine who moved from Oregon to here as a former physician was in the Corpus Christi Caller-Times as a front page article that he in state of Oregon, there are 3 young boys who have filed a legal suit on pedophilia against this person, this man who is in Corpus Christi.
Mm.
And Tom is very familiar with this, what I'm talking about. And the organization suffered through that. There are a lot of members quit because he was the head of the organization at that time, and I was the chairman of the board. He was the president of the organization. So a lot of repercussions. So we all suffered through consequences, and he still has no friends, so to speak, except me, who's, I don't know whether I should call it stood by him, but I guess I was there for him when nobody else chose to be close to him,
Yeah.
And it's probably a typical predator behavior. He was doing a lot of civic good, and he was helping a lot of people and with money and time, and he was very sincere in rescuing youth, from bad experiences. In fact, he adopted one of them, saw him through college education, and the boy is now happily married, has children. So all these good things he did, it's almost like he was compensating for something, So a couple of years down the road, at that time, it was another news coverage that he settled out of court, and with some monetary compensation to the victims, and my children, my daughter and my son, call him Grandpa so and so, Grandpa, with his name, and they were very close to him, and he's also very temperamental and sometimes very angry, and says some very hurtful things, even to me. And Tom is probably surprised also that why I stick by him through thick and thin, even when he is actually pretty mean-spirited to me also. So that's one of my, that's the only probably I've done that with other people who have done some bad things, but and everybody abandoned him or her. But I don't know why I stand by these people, not to defend them against their actions.
Yeah.
But probably more compassion than anything else. That
a lifeline when there is no other one.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah.
So that's kind of my experience. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
I'll go.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy.
Well, I was going to tell a short story about the first one when my family felt set aside, but then this came to me as soon as I read it just now. My father was an alcoholic, and his raging days were when I was in high school, which was 8th through 12th grade, 1965 to 1970. And I was so straight. I didn't drink anything. I didn't smoke dope. I was just a good kid, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my best friend who lived in the neighborhood, her parents would not let her go with me anywhere if they knew my dad was driving, or there was a possibility that my dad was driving.
Mhm.
And that was just really painful for me because I really loved her parents. And at the time, well, now I understand perfectly.
Yeah.
But at the time I didn't, right?
Right.
And then the other one is my story is a little bit different in terms of my person doing something bad or the possibility of doing something bad. I was thinking about when I was at Emory in Atlanta in X-ray school, a friend of mine from high school, he was really an acquaintance. I had some classes with him, but he was kind of a bad boy. But he was so cute. Oh my gosh, he was just so cute. And you know, it's the kind of guy you just say hi to in the hall, right? And after we graduated from high school, his name was Bruce Hubble. He got leukemia. And I kind of heard about it through the grapevine. And when he was in a bad, you know, and these were the days when, you know, they just, chemo wasn't the way it is now. They, you know, this was a death sentence if you had acute leukemia. And he would, when he was in the hospital, I would always go up and see him because it was so easy, you know. Emory Hospital wasn't that big as it is now. You just go up a few floors, you know, and I would go and visit him. And I think he really enjoyed it because nobody else visited him very much. I mean, people didn't know what to say, that, you know, and I mean, it's his close friends. I was just an acquaintance. I'm sure it was very painful for him. And they didn't want to see him like that and all those things. But anyway, one of the greatest things I did when I moved into the dorm, somebody had left this big bottle of scotch, right? Well, I didn't like scotch because that's what my parents drank, and I couldn't stand the smell of it or anything. So I took it because he was a big drinker in high school, right? So I took that bottle of scotch over and gave it to him. I think he loved that, you know, because he just wanted to be treated normal.
Yeah.
And and really, he's the whole reason why I went into radiation therapy, because he would tell me about his treatments. And he said, you know, I think that's what you should do. And I didn't want to cry, but I mean, I would have done a rotation there anyway, but it really,
Yeah.
you know, it really moved me.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Bruce.
Mm-hmm. It was a great job.
Anybody else?
Yeah, when I was going through basic training in the Army, I was outside cleaning my M16, getting ready to put it up and everything. And then I went upstairs in the barracks, and my bunkmate that was on the lower bunk had taken a bunch of pills. And he had a letter in his hand. He was pretty well passed out. And it was a Dear John letter from his wife that she had met somebody else and she was going to leave him. And the guy was certain to die because he's about to overdose. I picked him up and carried him down 2 flights of stairs. And the drill sergeants from all 4 platoons came out and told me to leave him and not to do anything. And I said, well, I'm carrying him to the hospital. And the hospital was up on top of this hill. And it was muddy and, just wet and everything. And the drill sergeants, they're like 2 on either side of me. They were yelling at me. I mean, right in my face, put him down, or we're going to recycle you and make you start all over again. I just ignored them and kept carrying, slipping in that mud going up that hill. And I finally got up to the hill, and I guess they figured that I would get him there faster than an ambulance. So they finally let me go. I just kept walking. They didn't really let me go. And I got up to the top, and my drill sergeant was a wonderful black man. He was huge. You know, he had served 3 tours of duty in Vietnam, in fit and shape. And he just looked at me with this little smile and said, "No man left behind." And it was over.
That's awesome.
So did he pull through?
Yeah, he made it. They gave him a medical discharge,
Oh, good.
but they had to, you know, pump his stomach and probably use charcoal and all that other stuff. But they saved him.
Yeah. And you did.
Thinking that you did.
You did.
Yeah, I just did what I thought I needed to do.
That's awesome.
I
Well,
don't know if I have an actual particular story, but I guess for me, I have a challenge. I feel challenged all the time when we have family, particularly that are neither side of our family has disagree. Like we don't argue, we don't fight, okay,
Mhm.
but we don't talk either. And so, you know, and I think that's where everybody just kind of wants to keep the peace, and where we know that we're going to disagree rather than having discussions about how we disagree in loving ways. We just don't talk about stuff.
Mhm.
And I'm, you know, I guess part of me is just wondering if that is always the best way of love, you know.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, uh, when it ends up getting passed to the next generation and they don't even have any idea where it came from, right?
Or new things arise that are political or whatever, you know. But our family is, I would say we have our unit of the family, mom, dad, me, Elaine, that unit has always been the peacemaker, bridge builder type of people in the family. However, at the same time, we're also the outliers because
Okay.
the bulk of their families are more conservative, politically different. I mean, we are really very different, wouldn't you say? Yeah, mom's nodding. And so there's just so many topics that we don't ever get to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope that we'll find some stuff in here about that. So thank you.
I was going to say that in my family, um, and my aunt who passed recently said she said that me and my brother were like the black sheep in the family. And I'm not really sure why that occurred, but I was very much aware of it growing up. And not that I'm quiet and shy anymore, but I was when I was a small child. I was very sensitive and very quiet and very observant. And I didn't have a nurturing mom, and there was 11 of us kids, so dad didn't really have time to spend, you know, time individually, but he was a hard worker, and as an adult I can see he did the very best he could. And I feel like my mom was just overwhelmed and really disappointed with how her life turned out versus how I think she thought it was going to be, you know. And so all I know is that I wanted to go and explore the world. I love the Lord and I love people, but somehow I wasn't, I didn't follow the group. I just kind of did my own thing, but I didn't want anybody following me. I just kind of did my own thing. And I mean, I was cool with everybody else being, you know, whatever they wanted, but it became cliquish. And
Mm.
my father did not play favorites, but when he passed, then my mom did, and I was not a favorite one. So I
Mm.
was the outcast from the girls. And basically it's like that to this day. And my mom has passed, and I thought, okay, that'll be done. And then one of my sisters picked up the torch, and like she
Mm.
became the leader. But I finally figured out, I think, why we didn't get along so well. Not that I didn't try, but I think my sister wanted me to be like her, and I wasn't. So I was always true to who I was, and I still am to this day. And they tended to gang up sometimes against me, and my brothers just stayed out of the drama. And so what I do is I love from a distance, and so I kind of do my own thing, and I don't wish them any harm, but
Mhm.
I do stay away. So I have 5 sisters and I only speak to one, and I have 4 brothers, and everybody's really busy. But I have one brother that I was talking about this just yesterday, and he was so sweet. He's my oldest brother. He said, "Well, I'm so sorry you've lost so many people in your life," referring to my siblings. And I said, "No worries, brother. I got you." And I got my one sister I talked to, and I have my kids. I said, and I have some friends. I said, so it's all good. And that's the way I look at it. But
Mhm.
there is a part of me, honestly, that really believed that family was supposed to be a safe place, and
Mhm.
that we would all love and respect each other, even with the differences. And it was supposed to be a safe place, and my experience was that it was not. But my children have seen it, and what I've told my children is that I said, I want you guys to love and respect each other, even if you don't agree. Because look, if not this, look at me. This is what happens. And
Mhm.
so my kids are really, I feel so blessed with my children. They're very compassionate, and they look out for each other, and they call each other out on stuff. They're all
Okay.
like so powerful. They're so opinionated, but they love each other. And that's what it's really all about, love. I just love this thing about challenges along the way of love, because nobody ever said love was easy.
Yeah.
So that's my
Yeah.
2 cents.
And you've heard that saying, you can choose your friends, but you can't choose your family. My mother used to say that, and there was a big family secret behind it, which I won't roll into right now, but Mom, I didn't get it. Well, now I do. Humor everywhere, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I'll do one real quick. Since we're in Chicago, is that last week or 2 weeks ago? Anyway, a little while ago. My father's family was probably still is very well off. Um, Sickeningly so, actually. One of my uncles was the first owner of the Detroit Lions. So yeah, there's
Yeah.
that. They had a department store in downtown Chicago, and it was looked at as the same size and style as Nordstrom's, Neiman Marcus, and all of those. The family, it was determined that everyone in my father's family would go to work in the store. My father wanted nothing to do with it. So he became a tool maker, and we moved to Detroit. And upon that, the family pretty much ostracized us. My grandfather, I could still go to Chicago. Like on sometime during the week, I take the South Shore into Chicago as an 8-year-old boy, which is it's crazy. But I go to the store and I see my grandfather, and we'd go out for lunch and things. But the rest of the family was very. My grandfather said that we weren't the black sheep of the family, just a really, really dark gray.
Mhm.
And after he had died, we probably never saw the family again. And when my father had Alzheimer's, when he was in the hospital, in the nursing home in Michigan City. Michigan City is about maybe an hour away if you drive it right, as opposed to the way that Michelle and I did. Well, that's another story. But they're an hour away, and it was too difficult for them to ever go see him. You know, he was there for a couple of years. The entire family knew where he was. My mother's side would come. I'd come down like every other week or something, but they never showed up. So I eventually got the idea that once my grandfather passed, like, beans on all of them. And I had no want or desire to have anything to do. Yeah, and it's not fair. Michelle wanted to see my grandfather's house. The family's house. We had I shouldn't say we, it's not mine. He had a house on Lakeshore Drive that was facing Lake Michigan. And the address was 6. Yeah, 6 Lakeshore Drive. It's, yeah. But there were so many bad memories of that. I just couldn't go there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just couldn't drive around. So I would have it would have been fun showing up to Michelle. Like, look, this is what I could have had. But no. Someday this could all have been mine. But no, I mean, it's to this day, you know, I've never heard from any of the my father's family.
Wow.
And I think when we went to dinner one night, I think I saw one of my cousins. But if I did, neither of us acknowledged each other. So, and it's sad,
Yeah.
but I'm over it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all. Thank you. Yeah. Anybody else before we go to the next slide? Okay.
I
Thank
got
you.
a quick one.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah, thank you, Greg.
So Sue and I were one of the founding families of a church there in Greenville. Yeah, Presbyterian Church was starting up a new church, and they wanted some people to, you know, help get it started.
Did we lose Greg?
It was vengeance.
I hope not.
Jim, we went to that church when Beth Templeton was interim minister there. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah, that's the church.
I think they control the internet here in the Greenville area.
I don't know the
You
rest
having
of it.
storms today?
There are storms in Florida. They're more central than I, so they may be dealing with that. Yeah,
Okay.
But Sue's here.
that is right. Sue is here,
Oh,
but they might be in different houses.
there.
There you go. Right.
Is Greg back?
Different realities.
Yeah, like Mulvaney and me, we're in different realities in different rooms.
Did Greg make it back? Is he okay?
He has
No, he's
made
not
it
coming
back.
back in yet.
Greg's still talking. He doesn't know he's not on. I'm sure.
Yeah, no, he dropped off. He's not here.
Okay.
If there's time, I can share. I'll try to be quick. Is there time?
Yes, please. Yeah.
I'm just kind of tickled that there's a lot of family drama. That's what I call it. And
Yeah.
there's no doubt that the original soap operas were not on TV or in storybooks. They were right in the family. I mean, you can write, they're just so dramatic and soap opera like. But I think, luckily in my family, not so much in my immediate context, but what I remember most closely, maybe what impacts me mostly now, because it affects my children, is the relationship we have with Ranjan's like brother-in-law and his wife. And it's kind of sad. Like, there's been upheavals, like sharing a difficult holiday. It wasn't a holiday, it was my mother-in-law's funeral. It fell apart. There was so much baggage that was
in the past between, I have to say, you know, with Ranjan and then my sister-in-law, or his sister-in-law, our sister-in-law. And whatever it was, you know, I think Ranjan was trying to put certain boundaries on things, and then it wasn't appreciated, and years of a lot of, I think, hurt feelings going back and forth. But in the end, talk about being set aside, to the point where I feel it went a little too far when, you know, my sister-in-law decided that even the kids shouldn't really have a relationship with my kids. But luckily now they're adults. I mean, these are the only cousins, right? My brother doesn't have children. And luckily on Ranjan's side, his sister has 2 boys and we're close to them. And then my brother-in-law has 4 children. One of whom is much older, and she's like 32, and she's getting married next weekend. We didn't even know about it, you know. And this is the same granddaughter of my in-laws who live with them. And Ranjan has funded his parents for a really long time. Like, they were basically his dependents since the early, I would say the later 80s. And that included her being in and out of that house. So but the fact that the adults in the room kind of made some of these issues known, and even young adults made these decisions to cut ties. I know that the kids are kind of, I think, friends on Instagram. So I know that they have at least some kind of relationship, if it's not just superficial. But it's too bad that somebody else's hurt can extend to the point where it goes beyond the current generation.
Yes.
Honestly, I feel like that's none of your damn business kind of a mindset for me. And I don't think, you know, anybody would impose. And luckily, my brother-in-law, he tries to be the glue, which is fine, but he doesn't really kind of stand up for us, so to speak. And so the story that was being told, I think that Rick mentioned, like, sometimes there's an older figure in the family that ends up being the glue, you know, that tries to keep it together. And unfortunately, when they leave this world, then great separation can occur. And it takes effort to create the way of love, right? And to stay on that path. I think that is the commitment you're willing to make. And despite certain members of, you know, these families that tend to be devout, understand the values of their faith, but somehow there's a whole different application and a what's the word, a different contingent put on. Like, no, you're the I can't find the word, the reason not to do that. You know, the exception. All of a sudden there's an exception that's at play. And I'm like, man, there's not that many of us. I mean, there's only so many family members, and that's a shame. So I just thought, now I take it humorously, because I'm like, it is just what it is. And maybe I should be making more of an effort, but I hope the next generation can help create that love, because I think they want it.
Yeah. Thank you, Ron. Thank you.
Greg's back. Greg?
Yeah. Thank you.
All right. Sorry about that.
Yeah, welcome back.
So, like I said, Sue and I were part of a group of families that helped start a new Presbyterian church there in Greenville. And, you know, we started meeting in the YMCA, you know, all that good stuff. And got to the point where, you know, we met for a few years and stuff. And, you know, we built a building, had a, you know, really nice, you know, nice building and everything. And then, especially after the building was up, then, you know, the church really started to grow and grow and grow. Mm-hmm. And the founding ministers was a husband and wife team. And so in these, you know, first years, you know, we were one-on-one with the ministers, and, you know, you could approach them at any time, you know, and they were very warm and welcoming. And we noticed as the church was growing bigger and bigger, and, you know, more people were coming in, that the ministers didn't seem to have time for us established folks.
Yeah.
And so several of our families were like, hey, have you noticed, you know, that, you know, they really don't have much time for us, and they're more worried about the new people coming in, and and when we would try to speak up, they were like, "Oh, thanks, but we want to hear from the new folks and see what the new folks have to say and stuff." So anyway, so not only us were feeling that, and so then one Sunday after church, Sue and I were hanging around, helping to close up and stuff, and we were talking, and the husband came walking by, and we were like, "Hey, hey, we need to talk to you for a minute." And he looked at us, turned around, and went the other way. And right then and there, Sue and I looked at each other and that, all right, we're out of here.
Yeah.
Founding member or not, we're out of here.
I'm sorry that happened. I'm sorry.
And then within several months, several other of the founding families all left also.
It's a failure of leadership, but certainly no compassion there, huh, Greg?
Right. Yeah. So that's a breakdown.
Their loss. That says their loss.
Their loss. That's right. Yes, absolutely.
Our gain.
Our gain. All right. Well, thank you. This is exactly what we're going to try to talk about today. So I appreciate everybody's heart. Let's see. So one of Jesus's favorite questions is, how do you read it? And in his day, in his time and place, he was talking about the scriptures, because it was a singular culture, although they had multiple ways of approaching the scriptures. That was basically their text. Does anybody have any other experiences with this idea of reading?
I'm not following what you mean.
Okay, so when the people Jesus was talking to were approaching the scriptures, he would ask them, "How do you read it?" Meaning, how does it impact you? How are you approaching it? What do you see there when you read it? Okay, but we can read other things beside the scriptures. I don't know if anybody has ever seen RuPaul's Drag Race, but one of the high points of every season is when they open the library, and the drag queens read each other. So, and this is a similar way of approaching this use, right? They are they're giving each other feedback in a slightly mean but also humorous way. Okay. I don't know. Does anybody else experience? Has anybody else seen this?
Tracy's got her hand up.
Oh, thank you, Tracy. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, I don't know if this is the direction you're going, but when you first said that, it made me think about how, if somebody says, "Well, I read the Bible," or even if they say, "Well, I read Luke or John or whatever," I think whenever we read it, depending on what's happening in our lives, we can see something that we didn't see before, or we misunderstood, or maybe we understand it in a different way, right? And
yes.
So, I don't know. That's just my take on it. Or it doesn't even have to be the Bible. It can just be some sermon that you thought was boring,
Yeah.
Then go back and listen to it. Oh no, it's not so boring after all.
Yeah. That's a great example. A love letter, right? Oh yeah, I read it.
Oh, and by the way, I saved mine that Mulvaney wrote me.
Must have.
You know, or yeah, some things are yeah, the reading is supposed to have an effect, right? And we can read our siblings, right? We can read a person's behavior. We can read body language, tone, all those things, if we care to read them. We can also pretend like we don't see them. Yeah. Any thoughts or from there? Okay.
Well, I think about when all those men wanted to stone
Mary, the
Mary
woman caught in adultery. Yeah.
Yes, the woman caught in adultery, and then Jesus said, "Let you without sin cast the first stone," or something like that. So, sometimes, and I relate it to the example I gave, but you know, all my sisters go to church and they love the Lord, and I do too, but I was confused, to say the least, how they could behave this way, you know, and profess their love for the Lord, because, you know, that, and it's like Jesus wouldn't behave that way. So it's almost like, how do you read it? Well, I think sometimes people read what they want to read out of things.
Yes.
And it's like selective hearing. When I was a school nurse, oh, well, my son's not listening to me. Can you check his hearing? And then they pass the hearing test. And I said, that's what we call selective hearing. They're just, they're sounding you out. They're not paying attention, but no, their hearing's fine. And so I think that's the same way with some Christians, so-called Christians. They pick and choose what they want to follow, you know? And so, and as far as what you're talking about,
yeah,
picking up the nuances, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
The tones, the little, I am so sensitive. I pick up all of that. That's an empath. That's what I am. And I think I can pick it up from a distance, and I pick it up. And sometimes I don't want to pick it up, but I do. But yes, and that was who I was as a young child as well. I could pick up all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So, and really, I thought they were just a bunch of hypocrites for, you know, being in a clique. And, you know, when you're in family, it's supposed to be all about love. It should be, you know, and it should be inclusive, not exclusive, you see.
Right.
And thank goodness, I don't have any issues. My nieces and nephews, they're all good, and my kids, and they all get along, and I say thank you God, you know, it didn't cross over where lines were drawn. But when my aunt died, it was very awkward, because I kind of stood by myself, and the one sister I spoke to, well, she was going and hanging with the rest, and she'd come and hang with me, but it's like she was trying to do both sides, and I just stayed in my space. I didn't want to go and mingle, because I'd been hurt too many times, and it happened also at my cousin's passing too. My cousin passed first, and then my aunt. And so it was just very awkward, but I was grieving, but I didn't want to add any more to that.
Yeah, that wasn't what the event was for.
No, exactly. And the one sister that did a lot, her husband was very sick, and I actually went up to him, and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? And I gave him a big hug. I said, well, I'm glad to hear you're doing well. But did I approach my sister? No. You know, but I meant no harm to anyone, but I was just playing it safe for myself.
Sure.
And so anyway.
Oops, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Rick.
You know, when you have the how do you read it? I think how you read it depends on where you are in your life.
Yeah.
That depending on where you are in your life at a certain time, you'll read something, you'll take something out of it. 2 days later, your life might have changed somehow, and you see a completely different side.
Yeah.
So there are times that, you know, you could almost say that there is no wrong or right way, because each one is molded to you and the way you are.
Exactly. We are going to respond based on how we read it.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like at our retreat last year, we had everybody had glasses with different colored lenses.
Okay.
And so you're looking at something, whether you're seeing something and seeing the world a certain way, or you're reading text a certain way, you're looking at it through a particular lens. I mean, we've been introduced to like Black liberation theology, for instance. That's a lens, right?
Yes.
So yeah, I think but I agree with what I've heard several of you say, is that it's kind of where you are at. You know, where am I at today? That's how I read it.
Well,
yes.
It's easier if you look at the world through Scotch glasses.
Scotch glasses.
Yeah. But the other thing about the question is, it gives us a chance to check in at that level. Do I want to read it in a different way? Does that make sense?
Sure does.
Michelle and I are getting the chance to try on different glasses in seminary. So far, we talked about critical analysis. In my classes, feminist, womanist, and a little queer. We haven't done much in that department, but basically, critical analysis is not only looking at what the Bible says, but what it doesn't say, and asking questions of the text. The feminist view is skeptical of the idea that everything that happened in Bible times only happened to men. And the womanist view is a little more specialized in that it's looking at the Bible or history or other texts from a perspective of women of color. Yeah, so let's keep going. I'm going to skip over the queer theology idea for now because in the sense of time. But well, there's one part actually that I did want to hit.
And we can make a whole other session about that.
Yes, but there's one. There's the definition, but what I wanted to pull out of it is queer means turning something upside down and inside out. It takes something from the margins and makes it central. Okay. So I was at a large event at the chapel a few weeks ago, and you know, I'm a tall guy, I'm a big guy, and somebody asked me if I was the bouncer for the chapel. Was it my job to kick people out? And I said, no, I'm the guy who finds people on the margins and brings them to the center. That's my job. And let's see if I can find. Yeah, there we go. Did I? Technical difficulties. Please hold.
So Jeff, you bounce them in instead of bounce them out.
Yes, I bounce them in, exactly. You know, those folks who are hanging out by the wall.
Well, you're like the carny barker trying to suck them in.
Oh, okay. Yeah. That could work.
Come see the bearded lady. Come be saved.
Yes. So So here we go. So sometimes we move from the center to the edge, and sometimes things move from the edge to the center. Relative positions can change. This symbol in front of you is on the lectern at the chapel that I serve at. And my pastor and I have had a couple of discussions about it. He went through seminary 20 years ago, so he's got a different perspective. But for me, I think this is this tells the story. I was formerly a math science person, so initially I thought the cross should be in the middle, right, as the origin. You math people get that? But I think that I think the cross has deliberately moved from the center out to the edge. We can look at this group of symbols, and we could move through time or space in such a way that any of these symbols could be in the center. Right?
Can I ask, what is that circle to the right of the cross?
Okay. This, I believe, is the Eightfold Path of Hinduism.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And then the star and moon of Islam, the yin yang of Taoism, and this is the symbol for Om.
I like it.
It's Hinduism. Yeah.
You muted, Michelle? I don't think
so. So this is one of the conversations that happens in the chapel. It's about 30 years old. So some of the congregation feel like it's time to move it out, but to me, this can create conversations in ways that I don't have anything else that will do it. Because we all want to be in the center, and we all find ourselves on the edges from time to time.
May I speak?
Yes, please.
I'm Elaine, Michelle's sister. I can see why you would say you felt the cross should be in the center if it's in a Christian environment.
Mm-hmm.
But when I just glance at it, not knowing where it came from, what it reads to me is that the peace dove, the dove of peace, is in the center because all of those faiths lead in some way to peace, to have peace. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, I saw the Jewish star.
Yes.
So that read to me, and the yin and the yang, they all read to me different religions of the world, but they all lead to peace, which is why the dove's in the middle.
Yes. And
that's the way I read it too.
Yes. And I've been in churches that would freak out about the fact that the dove is going up instead of down. But birds do that, right? Yeah.
Well, I have a sticker coexist on my car.
Yes.
And I'm on the path of spirituality. So for me, I love this because it's like everybody has this, it's like balanced. Everybody has the same section, peace. Mm-hmm. And and nobody should really be in the center in my belief. It's like we're all the same. It's all about love. It's all the same God. And to me, it's like the dove is love. And
Yes.
so I like this symbol. It goes, I resonate with it. There we go.
That's yeah, right on. Sarah, please. You had your hand up. Thank you, Diane.
Yes.
Sarah?
This is fantastic for people who have had experience with religion and religious symbols, and for internal use for you guys. And I guess it depends on what you want to use it for. But for people who are coming in from the outside with no experience in religious symbols, I've had to have this conversation with United Church a couple of times in meetings, where they're going through something. They're going through a diagram where that's meant for people on the outside, and I've had to stop and ask them, I don't know where God is in this picture.
Yeah.
And I think you're going to increasingly run into this with more and more people that are the nuns. Is that what they're calling us now? The NONES. That don't have any experience with religion, and that are that maybe are wanting to come in and explore it a bit more, but haven't grown up with anything like this and don't know anything about religion. This isn't going to mean anything to them.
Sure. I bring it to the conversation because I thought it would help with the idea of moving to the center versus moving to the edge.
And maybe it does. But as someone who's been out of the church for 20 plus years,
thank you.
More power to you if it helps you.
Yeah. All right. Very good.
It's not doing a thing for me.
Yeah, sure. Thank you.
I have one more thing to add. And that was really helpful and insightful to hear Sarah's perspective on this. I feel guilt when I look at this. Because Christianity, particularly in our white dominant British colonialism, have a superiority that we don't even realize that we have. And so our cross is on top. We're at high noon. And I don't have a problem that it's in the margins with everyone. It should be, because this is the picture it's painting. But I feel that it should be cockeyed so that no one is on top.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. Thank you.
Hey, Sarah, I just want to say that we prefer or would like to replace the word nuns with the word free spirits, people unburdened by the limitations of faith.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the limitations of religion.
Yeah.
And that's a great word for it too. Some of us don't believe we have spirits.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Okay. How are we doing on time? We're losing a little bit of time. Yeah, we'll go through. Let's skip a little. Well, I'm going to skip a little bit of this stuff. These are all examples of movement from the center to the edge or vice versa. Noah gets a message from God. He starts building a boat when nobody's seen boats. That puts him on the edge. He ends up in the center of the storm. And then his descendants are called to go to the edges of the earth. Joseph is the 11th of 11 sons. Becomes his father's favorite, and and his brothers hate him for it. But eventually he becomes second to Pharaoh. Judah and Tamar is told in the context of Joseph's story. Yeah, skip that one for now. Thomas and Jesus. We're doing okay. Whoops. So there are three interactions between Thomas and Jesus that we see in the Gospel of John. The first one, Jesus is explaining to the disciples that he's going into Jerusalem and he's going to be crucified. And Thomas, tells the other 11, let's go so we can die with him. So to me, Thomas is he's not a quiet guy, and I sort of read him as a maybe a little bit of a cynic or sarcastic or just out there, and he's ready to go and die with Jesus. In the Gospels, Jesus is telling his disciples over and over again about the fact that he's going into Jerusalem to die, and this is the only place where we get well, no, that's not true. I was going to say it's the only place, but it's not, because Peter gets upset that Jesus is going in to die. So we get two people that get the message, but Thomas is notable of one of the two. Thanks, Michelle. The second one.
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh, no, it's fine. In John 14, Jesus is talking about where he's going, and Thomas says, and is calling the disciples to follow him. And Thomas says, "We don't know where you're going, and how are we going to know the way?" And this is where Jesus says he's the way and the truth and the life. And then the final one is where Thomas gets his name of being Doubting Thomas. The first Sunday after the resurrection, the 10 apostles are there, and Thomas is absent. And I don't know where he is. Is he looking for Jesus? Is he just overwhelmed with the idea that Jesus has died? I haven't parsed this. I struggled with the possibility of putting empty chairs and empty tables as a song in this place, because that sort of comes closest to what I think Thomas is going through at this time. But I don't know. I'm just guessing. But the next, so from that Sunday until the next Sunday, Thomas is hearing from the other 10 disciples about the fact that they've seen Jesus. He's alive. He's got holes in his hands and a hole in his side. And Thomas tells them, until I see the holes and I put my finger in his hand and I put my hand in his side, I'm not going to believe that he's risen from the dead. So the next Sunday, the 11 are together. Thomas is there, and Jesus comes into the room and goes right to Thomas, or at least the text tells us that, and says, "Thomas, here are my hands. Here's my side. Put your finger in. Put your finger in the hole. Put your hand in the hole." Now, Thomas does this, and he says, "My Lord and my God." So the first Sunday, it tells us that the 10 rejoiced to see Jesus. But in the second Sunday, Thomas worships. So it's a different experience. And and I wondered about the metaphysics of putting your hand inside of God, right? Possibly. What does that mean? What is that? How would that feel? And I wondered if that might have a different effect on Thomas than the other 10 had.
Memorable.
Yes, very memorable.
Mushy.
And then I learned this other part. This came after preaching the sermons and seeing Thomas as an outlier, and as somebody with a different experience. And then I learned that he went to India. The other disciples go west, but Thomas goes east, and he goes to India. There were Jewish people in India at the time. Kerala was one of the main cities, and I have a video for that, but I'm not going to show that to you. And then here we go. And then there's this like 14-part musical play about Thomas. And I'm just going to show you a little bit, and I'll put it in the chat for anybody who wants to watch. Oh, no. I'm going to go to the beginning. Can you hear that?
No.
No.
Oh, how do?
When you share screen, you had to click the two boxes about audio, video.
Share sound. Here we go. So this is very cool to me, and I don't. I'm still exploring, but to me, Thomas is like Joseph and like Noah and like Judah in that something happens that separates him from the flock, so to speak, and as a result, it's sort of like an arrow in the pocket, or that one. I don't want to use. I'm not. Let's see. Yeah, it's that one. It's that gift that doesn't get revealed until later. Joseph goes to Egypt, has a terrible time, but then God reveals this gift out of Joseph, and this is, I see this in Thomas, and I see him sort of as having a more cosmic experience of Christ than the other 10. And so India makes sense as the place for him to go, because India has a more cosmic understanding of the universe than Europe or North America or South America or anywhere else. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Thoughts? Anybody? Are you going to let me come back next week?
Can I?
Yeah, please.
Well, I listen to a lot of stuff, but I have heard that those years where they didn't know what Jesus actually did in those years before he, and I heard some stuff that he actually went to India, and now you're saying Thomas went to India,
Thomas, yeah. Thomas was the first of the disciples who went to India, and yes, he was crucified there. He was beheaded there.
He was crucified or beheaded or both?
I think he was beheaded.
I've heard multiple stories. I've heard speared. I've heard dragged with a wagon. I've heard multiple stories.
And out of that came the very rich earliest form of Christianity. So India ironically claims that India received Christianity long before Europe did.
Yes.
And it is true. And there's a denomination now called the Syrian Christians who do spring from St. Thomas' life in India. And they even have the site where he was so-called, he died.
Yes.
And the holy places where there's St. Thomas Cathedral, which is one of the largest in India. And still, throngs of that the Kerala as a state where St. Thomas went to has the largest proportion of Christian Indians in India. Yeah, even now.
Yeah, Thomas means the twin. And when supposedly Jesus was in India between the time, when he was 13 or 14 and went to India, and Thomas was the twin, and they said that Thomas looked like Jesus.
I had also read this. I've read two accounts about who he was twin to. One was that he was a twin of Jesus, and the other that he was the twin of James. So
I timed out.
Oh, sorry.
I read that in a book that was written by a prominent German theologian.
Nice.
So what was Thomas's, I guess I'm unclear. I mean, the way of love was him spreading what Jesus' teachings, right?
Right.
But
yes.
Was there anything else unique about Thomas's way of love?
So to me, Thomas gets put on the outside by this thing that happens on the first Sunday, and he persists, right? So it's to me, Thomas is courageous, not just doubting. Right. In that, and then from there, I started seeing that pattern in all those folks before him. Does that make sense? Right. The idea that God sets someone aside for a time, for a circumstance. Why they're set aside is up for debate. Some people say that some people say that Joseph was proud of the dreams, and so that's why he's set aside. Some people say it's envy of the brothers, and that's why he's set aside. But God doesn't get in the midst of that. Right? He just we're just given the report. We're not given the evaluation of the players. And so what that does, it does a couple things in my faith, in the way I parse what's happening in the Bible, is that and we can get this from other places, right? A set aside is not necessarily a set back. It can be a set forward. And a family situation doesn't have to be permanent, and it can actually become something that is beneficial in the long run, or a friend situation can have a hiccup and have a redemptive arc anyway. Yeah. So that's, I guess that's how I see the way of love, is that it's like a lot of you talked about, it's not always pretty, it's not always easy, and it's not it's not always forward. There are stops and starts, backwards and forwards. Tracy, go ahead.
Well, thinking about what you just said about how it can be redemptive. One thing we need to do, though, is to be on the radar for being observant for changes that are coming or are happening. Yeah. Because if we're not paying attention, we can miss them, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And even if it's slow,
Well, I thought about this. Jesus, if Jesus could read minds, Jesus could read the room, and he chooses to come in a time when Thomas is not there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So, thank you for your time and your attention and your hearts.
Are you going to come back next week?
Yes, I'll come back next week.
Well, I must tell you right now that Jim and I will not be here because our daughter and her husband, Chris, are coming for the weekend. And we just have 2 days with them. So we're selfishly going to spend time with them.
Yes. Are you telling me it's time to pray?
No, I just want to forget to tell you.
Don't take it Michelle. Is Michelle telling me it's time to pray?
Oh, maybe Michelle is. I don't know.
Can I ask a question, Jeff?
Yes,
No,
Diane.
I'm saying namaste.
Oh.
Namaste.
I didn't get that.
Yes, Diane.
Okay, because I mean, I'm not really good with scriptures. I know about love, but I don't know really all the scriptures, don't have them memorized, don't really. Yeah. So my question is, did Jesus ever condemn an individual, come out and say something negative to them?
So Matthew 23 is a list of woes to to one set of religious leaders of the time.
But did he actually ever, on an individual basis, ever condemn someone to their face, criticize them?
The closest that that I would say is when a Canaanite woman comes to him on behalf of her daughter, and she asks him to heal her daughter, and Jesus says it's not right to take the bread to take the children's bread and feed it to the dogs. And she says to him, but even the crumbs fall from the master's table. The dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table. Now, some people read this as Jesus being racist or critical or talking down to this person. I read it as as like a rhetorical banter, because after she makes her comment, he says, "Your great is your faith, and your daughter will be well."
See,
so let me finish. So what Jesus is highlighting is the fact that she knew that Jesus was about love, even though he spoke those harsh words. Does that make sense?
Yes, I understood you, but I mean,
Okay.
it's just like we're reading words that
Yep.
are in scripture, but do we truly know intent on Jesus's part? What if it was, like you said, rhetorical, but he was waiting to see what kind of response she would have to
Yep.
show her faith? Just like you just said a few minutes ago, why did Jesus show up when he knew Thomas wasn't going to be there? How do we know that Jesus just didn't say that to set her up to say what she was going to say to show her
I
great
believe he
faith?
did. I believe he did
Yeah,
set her up.
because, and that was my whole thing. I don't recall anything. I don't remember, and that's why I asked, because I
Yeah.
have not studied scripture. I've read the whole Bible, but only once, and it was a long time ago. But I don't remember where Jesus actually was mean to anybody.
He's
You know,
not.
it was all about love.
Yeah.
And I think that sometimes people twist the scriptures and become self-righteous and condemn people. And Jesus didn't even condemn the adulterous woman, you
Right.
know?
Right.
And
Well,
so
yeah.
that's why I just think Jesus is all about love. And
Absolutely.
we should be too, for everybody.
Yes. I agree. I
Yeah.
agree.
Those are my last words.
Thank you.
Elaine just reminded me of when Jesus turned over the tables
Oh,
in
yeah.
the temple,
Yeah.
right? But again, yeah, he lost his temper, but
Yeah.
it was in response to them taking advantage of somebody,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
it he was mad at the powers that be in that situation because they were taking advantage. And so again, it was in love. It was a
Yes.
response to the fact that there was a lack of compassion there in what they were doing.
There
Well,
was
you,
greed.
And that,
you can make the argument that when Jesus said to the randos that were there, those of you who are without sin, I mean, that was a rebuke.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, it wasn't a sharp, you're just a real jerk, get out of here. But it was still a strong rebuke.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true.
all right. Well,
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't want to cut you off, but it is time to wrap
It is
up.
time. Yes. It is time.
Thank you for doing this. A lot of thought-provoking questions, and I think a lot for me to think of. I wrote down those scriptures because I need to go reread. It's been too long, and I need to refresh my memory. So I'm going to do that when we hang up, so I can be while our discussion is fresh on my mind, because Thomas is not one that I have thought too much of. And I know we skipped some of the other examples because of time, but I thought it was really good that you gave us the space to share more, and it was very insightful to learn more about each of you and some of your own family and your own stories that influence the way we look at that lens.
And I listened to a podcast but a couple of days ago. It was on forgiveness, and it was just basically saying that yes, as a human having emotions, we grieve, we feel rejected, but like when somebody hurts us, it's because they're not responding in love, they're responding out of fear. So then I have to, and this is where I need to work on with those sisters of mine. I have to go to kind of like a higher spiritual perspective and realize that they're operating out of fear and not love, and not react to it, which is hard not to do. But to love them, forgive them, and love them despite that, and realize that they are just not awake to the whole thing of loving everyone, not in its entirety, at least, so that's what I'm working on. I'm not quite there yet, but it made me feel better not to react to it and go from a higher perspective to realize that they're operating out of fear. Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah, hurt people hurt people.
Well,
I'd
Diana,
like to slap them though, but
Diana,
especially my younger sisters.
but Diana, you can rest assured that while you're basking in the glories of heaven, you won't have to worry about seeing them anymore.
Oh, I don't know.
Oh,
Oh. Well, I believe we all go to heaven, actually. That's what I believe. I think God loves us all, and I don't think, as a parent, I would never damn any of my children, no matter what they did. And that's my personal belief about God, too.
That's why you have me. It's my job to do
that. Thank you. It was very, very interesting. Very.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Thank you all.
Well, let me close this with a word of prayer and a quick story. So when we were at our retreat last year, it was a year ago, next week, wasn't it? Ranu taught us a little bit more about Namaste. And it was so when you had this visual, I'm a visual learner. So you talked about these two spirits, two people coming together. And I thought, we see this in so many other places, yoga class and all that, as well as in other, spiritual settings. And it's such a lovely expression. But then it reminded me of the praying hands that were in my parents' house all my life. Mm-hmm. And I thought, it's not something that, I just went, did Jesus really hold his hands that way and pray? Who really does that? Did he bow down? Did he, we do that because we saw paintings and pictures of that growing up, of people praying certain ways, right? We're taught those different practices and expressions. But I kind of thought, wow, maybe that connection to the cosmic Christ and this expression of peace and connection was all part of that, that prayer language, and anyway, I've never looked at these. I will forever look at these, Ranu, in that light, thanks to you.
Yeah. Well, it's a left hand and a right hand, right? They naturally have a difference of perspective.
That too, yes. Two coming together, yeah. All right, well, let's pray. Lord, thank you so much for all of these lenses and for the hands that hold each other, the arms that embrace each other, the hearts that infuse each other's space and ignite love. Thank you for teaching us how to be unconditional love. Thank you so much. In your name we pray. Amen.